All right, well, now that we have the clutch on the counter, the first thing, of course, we need to do is take off the safety wire. After we get the safety wire off, I'm going to scribe the cage just to help me keep orientated with where the screws are for when I start filing it. Remember that the clutches have two different years or whatever with ISO and non-ISO, which means that the thread pitch on the screws are different. So here we're going to remove the screws and make sure you got a properly fitting screwdriver. Pull all the screws out. Now we can pull off the top off the springs that are in the cover and remove the springs and start taking it all apart. Now once you got the disc and the plates out, you can just start separating them. You can inspect them if they're on your... Be using all new parts for this, so I'm not really concerned about giving them a full inspection, but if you're just doing a blueprint to your clutch, you could probably, reuse your friction disc and your clutch plates if they look good. If not, just get a new set. Now here you can see where the wear marks are, or where the rub portions are. There's some screw rub there, and then here you can see on the screw the little chaff marks where it's been rubbing against the disc. So what we're going to do is we're going to file all these areas that would be potential areas for contact. So first I'm going to start with, after I got the clutch all apart, just clean up the cage, the cover, all the pieces that I'm going to be working with. So I'm going to be using some power tools to do this, but you could use all hand tools, a hand file to file your cage and whatnot. I'm working at the Californiahodaka shop where Greg will do 3 or 4 in a batch. It took me a little over 2 hours to do this complete job, so power tools are used, but hand files, emery paper, all could be used. So I'm showing here, I'm marking where the clutch plates, where I'm going to be filing which notches that will correspond with screws to make sure there's no interference. So here I'm filing the clutch cage, and where you get the little chatter marks. Here I'm using a pneumatic tool to do the stack of clutch plates. Now this is a deburring disc on a grinder. If you don't have the deburring discs, you could use emery paper or wet dry sandpaper on a piece of glass or whatnot to take all the burrs off the clutch plates. So now we could start installing it all back together. First with the springs. Now I'm just using the outer springs. I'm not using the inner springs. That's just a preference. You could do whatever. You could use both if you'd like the stiffer, but I like the lighter feel, and I've never had an issue with clutch slipping. Now before I start stacking the plates and the disc, I'm going to add oil to each level. So we first start with a friction disc. Now after we have the plates all in, I'm going to put it on the arbor press and I have the screws in there without the top cover on, and just exercising the pack just to make sure there's nothing hanging up. You could do the same thing if you have a drill press. Set it up. And now I'll leave a little pressure on the pack while I take the screws out, so when I install the cage cover, the screws, there'll be no tension on the screws. So here's the cage cover going down. And now reinstalling the screws. Again, using a good proper screwdriver, snug up all the screws tight. And then after it's all done, I'll exercise it again with the screws tight, just to see and make sure that there's nothing hanging up. So you can see the operation here, nice and smooth. I'm putting pressure on the rotor gear. Now at this point is the safety wire, and remember just to kind of wire it in the direction I've pre-marked, kind of with a pin pre-marked the direction I want the wire to go in, so that the screws can't come loose. Now just tucking in the end piece there so it's out of the way. Now we'll get ready to install the pinion gear, and don't forget the little shim that goes in the gear when it's placed on top of the rotor gear. And it will snap down in, and then this is the pinion bushing, then goes in and then ready to install back on the bike. And that's the clutch rebuild and blueprinting.